Hello folks, IPMAT. Anyone who's thinking about IPMAT, you're thinking about IPMAT, Rohtak and Indore, 3 different exams. Course from 2 IM starts on March 31, 6 hours per day, big sprint till April 21, and then a bunch of mocks. Sign up, best wishes.
Right, let's go through the next set of questions which had common instructions in the paper. There are about 7 questions and the instructions were common. It says complete the following sentences by choosing the most appropriate word or phrase from the options given below. These are direct vocabulary questions. They'll ask you to choose an appropriate word or a phrase. That phrase could be an idiom as well. So this is where your vocabulary knowledge will come into play. One of the best ways to improve vocabulary is through reading. If you read a lot, if you read different kinds of material, it will help you to improve your vocabulary, not just for individual words, but also for phrases and idioms, right? As you're preparing for the exam, of course, you should definitely do a lot of reading. You can also go through a list of commonly used phrases to improve your knowledge. But if you're going the list way, if you're going through a list, don't just look at the phrases and cram their meanings. Learn them in context. So every phrase or idiom that you learn, look at 2-3 sentences that use that frame or idiom so that you can retain them better. Okay. Reading is the best way. Again, I repeat, reading is the best way to improve your knowledge of phrases and idioms. But if you're going through a list, make sure that every phrase or idiom that you're going through, along with the meaning, you should also have 2 or 3 sentences that show you how you can use that phrase. That will help you retain them better. All right. Okay, let's go through these questions. Now it says, the first question says, my supervisor seemed to be in a bad mood because he dashed when I asked if I could leave an hour early. Now, even before looking at the options, you can guess what this blank could be, right? See, it says my supervisor seemed to be in a bad mood. And then it says, when I asked if I could leave an hour early. Now, if your supervisor or boss is in a bad mood and you go to them and say, I want to leave an hour early, the reaction is most likely going to be negative, right? So here, this blank is going to have a negative phrase, right? So it could be something like my supervisor seemed to be in a bad mood because he shouted at me when I asked if I could leave an hour early or something like that. It has to be, most likely it will be something negative. So you can sort of make a quick guess like that and then look at the options. So it says, because he ate my head. Now there's nothing in English called ate my head. There is no phrase or idiom called ate my head. This has no meaning in English. This is not a phrase that is used. So this is just wrong English. He cut my voice. This is wrong English as well. There is no phrase like cut my voice. He bit my head off. Yes, this is indeed a phrase. Okay, and it means that if somebody bites your head off, that means they really shout or yell at you, often for no reason, right? So we're going to park this. This looks like the right answer. I'm parking it because we haven't looked at 4. Always look at all the 4 options and choose the best one. Hit my ear off. Again, there is no phrase like that in English. The answer is indeed 3. Bit my head off. And it means to yell at someone or to be very critical of someone, often without a good reason. So here the supervisor, the employee or the teammate was asking to leave an hour early. It's not an unusual request. But because the supervisor was in a bad mood, they ended up shouting at them. They ended up yelling at them. But there was no good reason for the supervisor to shout at that person. That person hadn't done something wrong. So bit my head off is used in these cases, yelling at someone often for no good reason. So this is a common phrase. The answer is 3. Let's do a question 2. In a circus where performers share dressing rooms, training spaces, and work in a fast-paced environment, the success of a show dash fostering teamwork and collaboration. Again, try to guess. Try to make a quick guess. Don't spend a lot of time guessing. But it says the success of a show dash fostering teamwork and collaboration. Now, this is a circus. The performers are sharing dressing rooms and training spaces and work in a very fast-paced environment. It's very important for them to exhibit teamwork and collaboration. In such an environment, and especially think about a circus, they have to work as a team. They have to collaborate very well. So the success of the show actually depends on that. So this blank could be depends on. The success of a show depends on teamwork and collaboration, right? So make a guess. The options comes with this doesn't, we're looking for something which is similar to depends on. Comes with simply means it comes, A comes with B. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a dependent relationship. So this is not the answer. Comes along with is also similar to comes with, right? He came along with her, or Rajesh came along with Ramesh. We're not talking about a situation like that. So we're not talking about companionship or accompaniment. So this will not fit. Comes down to. Now this phrase means depends. Okay, so the success of a show comes down to fostering teamwork and collaboration, which essentially means depends. We'll park this. Comes about, this doesn't fit here. Okay, comes about doesn't mean depend and doesn't fit in this context. So the answer is definitely comes down to. Okay, so if a situation or decision comes down to something, that is the thing that influences it the most. So it means is teamwork and collaboration really influence the success of the show, or the success of the show depends on teamwork and collaboration. So that's what comes down to means. Okay. All right, let's look at question 3. Anil could not go to his friend's party as he had fever and was dash. Now, there is an and there. Right? We already know that he had fever. So whatever comes in the blank has to be related to fever. Most likely. I mean, not most likely. It will be related to fever. Otherwise, why would you use and? So as he had fever and something else, maybe another ailment. But it has to be connected to fever. It has to be connected to poor health. Okay, let's look at the options. Beneath the weather. There's nothing called beneath the weather in English. It's just wrong English. Under the weather, yes, it is correct. Under the weather means feeling ill. Okay, so you say that if you say that I'm feeling under the weather, that means you're not feeling well, you're feeling unwell, right? I can't come to office because I'm feeling under the weather. That means you're sick, you're feeling unwell. This is a commonly used phrase now, and it's connected to health and poor health and fever. Outside the weather, beside the weather, again, doesn't make sense. There are no phrases like that. The only thing that works is under the weather, and that is the answer. Okay, it's a commonly used phrase nowadays. All right, let's look at question 4. In his address to the candidates contesting the student council elections, the principal said, and there is a quote from the principal, if you want others to take you seriously, then you must dash on issues like gender bias and inclusivity. Now, remember, these are leadership positions. These are candidates who are contesting for student council elections, which is leadership position. So what the principal is saying is that you must dash on issues like gender bias and inclusivity. Gender bias and inclusivity are important issues for any leader today. So what the principal is essentially trying to say is that you must focus on issues like gender bias and inclusivity, any candidate, right? Let's make a quick guess like that. Let's look at the options. One is rule the roost. Now, rule the roost is a valid idiom, but rule the roost means dominating something, taking charge or exhibiting your authority in the situation, right? So if you rule the roost, that means you're dominating it, you're taking charge, you're sort of, you have the authority on it. Although it's a valid idiom, it doesn't fit here because we're talking about focusing on issues like gender bias and inclusivity, not really dominating it. Dominating issues will not make sense. So this might be an attractive option because it's a valid idiom, but it doesn't fit here. All right. Okay. Walk the talk. Interesting. Now, what does walk the talk mean? Walk the talk means that you convert your words into actions. Basically, practice what you preach. It's a very nice informal way of saying practice what you preach, right? So one thing is to talk about gender bias and inclusivity, right? So the candidates can say that, oh, a particular candidate can say, I believe in inclusion, I believe in eliminating gender bias, but those are just words. What is very important is to convert those words into actions. Your actions should reflect your words, right? So walk the talk is that. So now try to fit it there. Then you must walk the talk on issues like gender bias and inclusivity. That means you should not only talk about it, but also implement those words or take actions accordingly. It fits here very well. Let's park it. You must read the lines on issues like gender bias and inclusivity. It doesn't make sense. Read the lines simply means reading. Okay, it doesn't fit here at all. Go around the bend. Then you must go around the bend on issues like gender bias and inclusivity. It does not fit here at all. This is a valid English idiom, but it means go around the bend means going crazy, right? So if you say that somebody has gone around the bend, that means they've lost it. They've gone crazy. They've gone nuts. Okay, which clearly doesn't fit here. So in this case, the only thing that fits is walk the talk. All right. Now, this might be a tricky one because rule the roost can seem attractive. In these kind of questions, typically either you would know the idiom or you won't know the idiom, right? So if you know it, then you should attempt the question. Don't take an unreasonable amount of risk in these questions. Okay. Either you know it, in that case, you'll answer it, or you have to be very sure that you've eliminated the other 3 options very successfully. Don't take a lot of risk with these questions. Okay, if you know it, mark it. Or the other situation is, I don't know the answer, but I'm pretty confident that the other three options are not the answers. In that case, you can take that risk. But otherwise, you shouldn't take a lot of risk with these questions because there is negative marking involved. All right, let's look at question 5. The students' picnic plans dash when it started raining heavily in the morning. Now, again, try to make a guess. The students' picnic plans, if it started raining heavily in the morning, that means their picnic plans would have been spoiled, right? Obviously, because, picnic is outdoors. So let's look for an option, similar option. The students' picnic plans dropped out. Doesn't make sense. Dropped out means to withdraw. Let's say you drop out of a course. Okay, you're pursuing a course and you drop out of a course. That means you've withdrawn from the course midway. You didn't complete it. Doesn't make sense. Dropped off is dropping someone off. Your mom or dad can drop you off to school. Doesn't make sense here. Fell through. Yes, fell through might not be common, but it is absolutely correct here. The students' picnic plans fell through means they didn't materialize, right? It was a plan, but unfortunately, the plan was not materialized because of some reason. In this case, because it started raining heavily, so the plans didn't come to fruition or the plans did not materialize. So fell through definitely fits here. Fell behind does not fit here. Fell behind means falling behind someone in a race or in a competition. Okay, that's what fell behind means. So it doesn't make sense here. The only option that makes sense is fell through. Might not be common, but definitely add it to your vocabulary. I think it's common in other countries, probably the UK and the US, but we don't use it very commonly in India. But it means that something planned or expected failed to happen. So their picnic plan failed to happen, unfortunately, because it started raining heavily. So the answer is definitely 3. Let's look at question 6. All the employees agreed that the new regulations had dash positive changes in the workplace. Now, new regulations, again, try to make a guess. New regulations had dash positive changes. New regulations can cause positive changes in the workplace, right? I mean, there are new regulations, there's positive. So we can say that, okay, the new regulations were responsible for these positive changes in the workplace. Okay, right. Had brought up. Now, brought up here does not make sense. When you bring up an issue, you're voicing out an issue or you're making others aware of that issue, right? So you brought it up. So here you cannot say brought up because it doesn't fit the context. So this is gone. Brought on. Very interesting. Now, what does brought on mean? Brought on also implies a cause effect. So new regulations had brought on positive changes in the workplace. See, we are saying that the new regulations were responsible for the positive changes, right? So it is a cause effect. Don't get confused with cause effect, but cause is the reason. So new regulations is the cause and positive changes is the effect. Okay, or even if you don't understand cause effect, ignore that. New regulations had caused the positive changes or were responsible for the positive changes. Now, brought on is also used in such situations, but brought on, when it's used, the effect is often negative. It is a cause effect in case of brought on as well, but the effect is often negative in case of brought on. So for instance, you can say that the unseasonal rains brought on an illness across the city, or the unseasonal rains brought on a disease that spread across the city, right? So when we talk about negative effects, we typically use brought on. It's not used with positive effects. Here we're talking about positive changes, so brought on won't fit. Okay, so that's why it's not the answer. It's a little subtle, very tricky, but it fits with negative effects. Brought along will not fit here. Brought along is brought along with it. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. We are talking about causing positive changes. So brought along will also not fit. Brought about absolutely fits because it's used in case of cause effect. And here the changes are often positive. So the major difference between brought on and brought about is brought about is positive and brought on is negative. Hence, here we will say all the employees agreed that the new regulations had brought about positive changes in the workplace. It's a very tricky question. Okay, and these kind of questions, if you're not sure about in the exam, let's say this comes in the exam and you're stuck, you're like, okay, this could be brought on, this could be brought about as well, and I'm 50-50 on this. You should leave this question. Right? 50-50 is not a situation where you should attempt a question because there's negative marking. So you should just leave this question. But if you're sure that, okay, if you know that, no, I'm pretty sure it's brought about because on is negative, let's say if you knew that, or you were like 90% sure that it's brought about, then attempt it. But 50-50 is not a situation that you should attempt the question. You should just leave it. Most students, in my opinion, should have left this question in the exam because it is tricky. All right. Okay. So brought about means to cause something to happen or to make something occur. It's the past sentence, past tense of the phrasal verb, bring about. And also remember, it's often positive, whereas brought on is often negative. Okay, let's look at 7. Sheila keeps interrupting Manohar when he's playing with his friends, but he dashed because she's his younger sister. So Sheila keeps interrupting Manohar. Sheila is the younger sister to Manohar. She keeps interrupting Manohar when he's playing with his friends, but he dashed because she's his younger sister. Now, if your younger sister is interrupting you, right, and there's also a but, so it will mean a contrasting situation. She's interrupting him. Okay, you would expect Manohar to scold Sheila, but there is a but there. So probably Manohar will have an opposite reaction. So maybe Manohar just lets it go, right? Because she's his younger sister. So let's look for a word. Puts her off is not a valid idiom. So this is gone. Puts up with her means tolerates her. Okay, so let's park this. So, but he tolerates her. But he tolerates her because she's his younger sister, or but he puts up with her. That's tolerating her. Puts along with her is not a valid idiom. Puts her on is also not a valid idiom. The only valid idiom here is puts up with her. And that means tolerating or accepting someone's behavior or an unpleasant situation, even if you don't like it. Okay, so the answer here is 2.
Hello, folks. Those of you who are thinking about IPMAT, the integrated 5-year course, you've got to think about it seriously. Parents who are listening in, you have to plan for this. After 12th standard board exams get over, there are a ton of exams. This IPMAT integrated course is a brilliant course. It's a 5-year course. Anyone who's interested in MBA, anyone who's saying, look, I don't want to do the mainstream thing, but I want to do something compellingly good, you must take this as part of your structure, as part of your set of options available. The number of seats is not too high, so you cannot say this is my only option, but you have to say, hey, I'm giving this a go. The exams to write, very clearly, these 3. On GIPMAT is on April 26th. IPMAT for Rohtak is on May 5th. Indore is for May 12th. This is the simplest exam. This is the toughest exam. So be a nice gradation. You have to prepare for it. It's not a bleeding obvious exam that you can just go and wing it. There's also data interpretation, logical reasoning section. We guys have a course for it, which covers a bunch of live sessions. We'll be doing 6 hours of live sessions for 3.5 weeks. That's a run up to the exam. Bunch of mocks that we will administer to them and discuss and help and mentor and plan all of that with detailed video solutions. Whatever we do, we'll have detailed video solution for the previous year papers. We'll discuss them also in great detail. Come up with a good strategy for them to attack this. And the young kids, we'll do our best to help them take this exam, help the students take this exam. All of this included. The course begins the kind of almost immediately after the board exam ends. So it's on March 31st. So details of the course, how to sign up, when to pay, all of those are available in the description. Check that out, sign up and have fun. Best wishes.
Let's look at these next set of questions. There are about 5 questions which had common instructions. The instructions say in each of the following sentences, the incorrect part of the sentence is underlined. All right. Choose an alternative from the 4 given options so that the sentence is rendered correct. Okay, so this is a classic sentence correction question. They'll give you a sentence where they will underline a portion which is potentially wrong. And then you have to choose one out of the 4 options which will make the sentence correct or correct the sentence. Okay, so sentence correction questions require grammar knowledge. So you'll see typically the concepts that are tested are subject verb agreement, prepositions, tenses, and so on and so forth. So make sure to brush up on your grammar. All right. So first question is, he's very careless and has loosed his keys all the time. And the underlined portion is has loosed his keys. Now, right up front, you can see that loosed as a word, right? This is a commonly confused word. So even before going to the options, you can think about it if you can spot the error, right? If you're able to spot some sort of an error before going to the options won't confuse you as much. See, this is a commonly confused word. You have loose and you have lose. Both sound the same, okay? But the spelling is different and the meaning is completely different, okay? Lose is when you misplace something. Okay, so if you've lost your book, if you've lost your pen, you will say, I've I've lost my pen, or I've lost my book, right? You will use lose with a single O. Here, lose with a double O is the opposite of tight. Okay, my writing is horrible. Apologies for that, but this is the opposite of tight. So double O is opposite of tight. So your trousers can be loose, your shirt can be loose. It's often used with apparel. So there is a big difference, although they sound the same. All right. So here they're clearly talking about misplacing keys. So right up front, you know that the word usage is wrong here. It cannot be LOOSED. It has to be LO. It has to be a single O. So that itself is wrong. So we're going to look for an option which has a single O, and then we'll look at the tense as well. So he's very careless and has lost his keys all the time. Now, the first one says was losing his keys. Now, this has a single O. So this could be correct. I'm just going to park it, right? So always try to eliminate it. This has a double O. This is clearly wrong. You can eliminate it straight away. This has a single O, so you can park it. This has a single O, you can park it. Elimination will make your life easier. Now, there are three options here. Now, we'll have to look at the tense. Now, look at the statement. It says he's very careless and has lost his keys all the time. Now, this seems to be this person's habit. Losing keys seems to be this person's habit because this person is careless. We are talking about a habitual action here. Okay. And what is a habitual action? The action of losing keys. It's a habitual action for this person, for him, for this boy or man. Now, when you're talking about habitual actions, and if you're in the present, we always use the simple present tense. These are rules which you will have to understand and remember. Okay, so if you're talking about the present and you're talking about a habitual action, typically habitual actions are mentioned using simple present tense. Now you'll have to look for an option which has simple present tense, and that would be your answer. Was losing his keys was in the past, so this cannot be the right answer. Okay, also ing form, if you're saying losing, you're referring to a continuous action. This is not really a continuous action. This is a habitual action. Okay, and the bigger problem is it's in the past. We're looking for simple present. So this is gone. Okay, loses his keys. Now this is simple present. Simple. This is a classic simple present statement. So look at this. He's very careless and loses his keys all the time. Your simple present sentence indicating a habitual action. We'll keep it parked. Let's look at the fourth option. So we had parked this as well, right? Because it has single O. Now it says has loses his keys. Now this is grammatically incorrect because if you're using has, we always use has or have with the past participle, which is lost. It will never be has loses. Okay. And the moment you say has lost, for instance, if this was has lost, it would become present perfect. We're not looking for present perfect. Since this is an habitual action, we're looking for simple present. So hence this is wrong as well. I'll just quickly repeat it. This structure is grammatically wrong. You will not say has loses. If you're using has or have, it has to be the past participle form, which is lost, which will be incorrect in this situation because we're looking for simple present. Okay, so make sure to brush up on your tenses. Here, the answer is definitely 3. This question is testing your word usage, lose versus lose, and also your tenses. Simple present is the correct choice. Okay, let's look at question 2. It said, I've been having a headache, so I will not attend the meeting. Now here we're talking about an action in the near future. This person is giving a reason for not attending a meeting that's going to happen in the near future, right? So the person is saying, I've been having a headache, so I'll not attend the meeting. Why will you say had been? Why will you talk about the past? You're having the headache. You're currently having a headache. That's why you're not going to be attending the meeting, or you won't be able to attend the meeting. Right? So therefore, you have to, this particular part of the sentence, the underlined part, which we're correcting, has to be in present form. Past will not make sense. You have a headache right now, and hence you will not be able to attend the meeting. So it has to be in present. Okay, let's look at the options. I was having a headache. Doesn't make sense. If you were having a headache in the past, why will you not attend the meeting in future? Doesn't make sense. So this past will not fit. I have a headache. Yes, this is a good choice. Right? I have a headache. That means I have a headache right now. So I will not attend the meeting. We'll park this. I used to have a headache. Okay, you used to have a headache. Then why will you not attend the meeting in future? You used to have a headache, right? You're indicating a past action. Doesn't make sense here. You have to talk about the present in this situation. So this is wrong. I have headache. Now this can be tricky. because both between 2 and 4, the difference is the word a. And remember, in this case, headache is a countable noun. The way we are using it right now, it is a countable noun. So we always say, I have a headache, because you can actually count headaches. You can say 3 headaches or something like that. It may seem a little strange, but headache in this context is a countable noun. So we always say, I have a headache. You need that article because it's countable. All right. So the answer is 2, I have a headache. Again, it's a little tricky because between 2 and 4, you can get confused. So here, again, they're using your knowledge of tenses and also the fact that, headache is a countable noun and therefore we attach an article in front of it. All right, let's look at question 3. The negotiations are unsuccessful and the board's hopes to continuing talks on a future deal seems to be increasingly improbable. Understand the sentence. So we're talking about a board that is probably negotiating with another party and their negotiations are unsuccessful. So the board has very little hope of continuing these talks in the future because the negotiations have been unsuccessful. Now, the underlying part seems to have multiple errors here. So look at it carefully before going to the options. It says board's hopes to continuing talks, not to continuing talks. This is awkward. Board's hopes, we won't say to continuing talks. We'll probably say board's hopes of continuing talks. Of continuing talks is fine. To continuing talks is grammatically incorrect. So that's one problem here. Most likely that's a problem here. Also look at the subject verb agreement. We're talking about hopes, which is plural, and we're talking about seems, which is singular. And that's a problem. If there's a plural verb, plural noun, there should be a plural verb. If it's a singular noun, then it should be a singular verb. Now, seems is singular. Seem, on the other hand, without the S is plural. So verbs, it's interesting because you add an S to a noun, like you add an S to hope, it becomes plural. So when you add an S to a noun, it becomes plural. But verbs work in the other way around. When you add an S to a verb, it becomes singular. So seems with an S is singular, seem without an S is plural. So because this is a plural verb, you need a plural, because it's a plural noun, you need a plural verb, which is seem. So there is a subject verb agreement error as well. Let's look at the options. Number 1 says board's hopes to continue talks on a future deal seem. Now here also notice the minor difference. Here we are talking about board apostrophe S, and here it says boards with an apostrophe at the end. Now this really depends on context. If you're talking about a single board, then this is correct. If you're talking about multiple boards, then this is correct. But look at the context. Most likely we are talking about a negotiation between one board and another party. So a singular board seems better. So board's hopes to continue talks. Now this is correct. So we have changed continuing to continue. To continue talks is absolutely grammatically correct. On a future deal seem, this has fixed the subject verb agreement error as well. We are talking about a plural noun and a plural verb. So this option seems correct. Let's park it. Okay, number 2, board's hopes. Now they've gone back to plural, right? Plural, although as we've seen, singular seems to be better, but ignore that. Board's hopes to continue talks on a future deal seems. Now the problem is the subject verb agreement error is retained here. Okay, and also you wouldn't say to continue talks. Okay, because if you're talking about, if it's to continued, here continued is being used as an adjective. It's an adjective for talks. So it should be of continued talks. If you're using to, it should be with a verb. Okay, like to continue. Continue is a verb. So therefore, first is correct. But to continue is wrong because continued is an adjective. So in that case, it has to be both hopes of continued talks. So to continued talks is wrong. On a future deal seems, it has the subject verb agreement error as well. And most likely this plural boards is also wrong. So there are multiple errors here. We're going to eliminate 2. Board's hopes on continued talks on a future deal seem. Now the seem is fine. The subject verb agreement is fine. But on continued talks is grammatically incorrect. Okay. You can say board's hopes of continued talks, but hopes on continued talks doesn't make sense. It's grammatically correct. So there is a preposition error here, we'll eliminate it. Boards hopes to continuing talks on a future deal seems. Now, here again, we are back to having that subject verb agreement error. Okay. Boards hopes to continuing talks on a future deal seems. So we have a subject verb agreement error. Therefore, this cannot be the correct option. The only option that works is boards hopes to continue talks on a future deal seem. Again, I'm repeating here, this is correct. To continue, to is a verb. We're using to has to be used with a verb. Continue is a verb, so it's absolutely correct to continue. And hopes and seem, the subject verb agreement is correct as well. And most likely, based on context, this is singular, so 1 is perfect. All right, this is a very tricky one. Again, in the exam, if you're not sure, leave it. Don't take an unreasonable amount of risk, because otherwise you'll start losing marks because of negative marking. So if you're not sure of the grammar aspects, if you're confused between the options, if you're like 50-50, just leave the question and move ahead. Let's look at question 4. In my opinion, the psychological thrillers of Alfred Hitchcock, who's a master of suspense and horror, have more lasting impact than any other filmmaker in history. Now you can see in the sentence that the sentence is attempting to make a comparison. Now, whenever you have a comparison sentence, be careful that you're comparing apples to apples or oranges to oranges. You cannot compare apples to oranges. That would be what we call a faulty comparison. It's a very common error in sentence correction. So always look out for that whenever you see a comparison statement. Excuse me. Right. So let's see if the comparison is okay. It says, in my opinion, the psychological thrillers of Alfred Hitchcock, who's a master of suspense and horror, have more lasting impact than any other filmmaker in history. Now, the sentence means to compare psychological thrillers of Hitchcock with psychological thrillers of other filmmakers. But unfortunately, what the sentence is doing is it's comparing psychological thrillers with other filmmakers. You see that? Have more lasting impact than any other filmmaker in history. You can't compare Hitchcock's psychological thriller with other filmmakers. You can compare Hitchcock with other filmmakers. But if you're taking thrillers of Hitchcock, you have to take thrillers of other filmmakers, and that will be an apples to apples comparison. So this definitely has a faulty comparison, which we have to fix in our options. There seem to be other errors as well, but this seems to be the main error. Let's continue. Are having more lasting impact than those of other filmmakers. Now, very interestingly, this fixes the faulty comparison because it says than those of other filmmakers. So when you're saying than those, that means you're referring to the psychological thrillers of other filmmakers. So this option definitely fixes the comparison. But here it's saying are having more lasting impact. It's using the continuous form of the tense, which is wrong here because we're not talking about any temporary action. When you're using a continuous form, you talk about temporary actions that continue. Here we are talking about impact. Impact that was there, impact that is there, that was there in the past, that is there in the present, and potentially will continue in the future as well. It's not a temporary action. It's a legacy that we're talking about. It's talking about Alfred Hitchcock's legacy, and legacies are never temporary. So we're not talking about temporary action, and therefore we will not say are having more lasting impact. It is wrong. Okay, so please understand that continuous form of the tense is wrong here in spite of this option fixing faulty comparison. All right, now it says option 2 has had a more lasting impact than those of other filmmakers. So again, it fixes the faulty comparison, but is this correct? Has had a more lasting impact. Now there is a subject verb agreement error here. We are talking about psychological thrillers. The subject is psychological thrillers. And the verb here that we're using is has. You have to map the subject to the verb. So psychological thrillers is plural. Is has plural? No. Has is singular. Plural is have. So it should have been have had. Because it's singular and thrillers is plural, there is a subject verb agreement error, and therefore this is not correct. Okay. Very, very tricky option. A lot of you might have picked this option, but there is a subtle subject verb agreement error. Okay, let's look at 3. Have had a more lasting impact. Now, this is correct. Now the subject verb agreement error has been fixed. So have had a more lasting impact than those. Faulty comparison has been fixed as well. And it says than those of any other filmmaker. This makes it even more correct. Because what we're saying is that Hitchcock's thrillers have a more lasting impact than any other film, than those of any other filmmaker. So that means they have the maximum impact. They have the most amount of impact. So the any word is absolutely correct there. Makes the sentence more robust. Let's park this. Had more lasting impact than any filmmaker. This does not fix the faulty comparison. Here again, we're comparing thrillers to filmmaker, and that is wrong. And also, we cannot use the past tense here. Okay, so therefore, this is also wrong. The sentence that works, the option that works is number 3. Right? So have had a more lasting impact than those of any other filmmaker. Tricky one again. So if you're not sure in the exam of these questions, don't take an unreasonable amount of risk. Leave them. But of course, in the run-up to the exam, please practice sentence. Sentence correction is a very common question type that most likely will appear in your exam. So learn the sentence correction rules, brush up on your grammar, tenses specifically, subject, verb, agreement, so that you can do justice to these questions. Let's look at this question. While the bustling streets were filled with the cacophony of honking horns and chatter of pedestrians, the serene countryside where time seemed to move at a slower pace provide a welcome retreat for their seeking solace amidst the chaos of urban living. So we're talking about city dwellers, right, who seek refuge or who turn to the countryside to relax and rest and escape the noise and the cacophony of cities. That's what the sentence is talking about. Now, look at the sentence, a pretty long sentence, a tricky one as well. But look at the first part of the sentence. It's completely in past tense. While the bustling streets were filled with the cacophony of honking horns, were filled where time seemed, this is completely in the past tense. So therefore, you'll have to keep the tense consistent. If you say where time seemed to move at a slower pace, provide a welcome retreat, this is wrong because suddenly you're switching to present. Your tense should be consistent. So this should be in past tense. Provided would be better. Provide a welcome retreat for their seeking solace. It's a wrong pronoun. You're talking about people. Okay, so you are providing a welcome retreat for people seeking solace. To replace people, you will not say their. Their has to be used with some possession. Their house, their game, their swimming pool. We're not talking about possession here. We're talking about people. So there is a wrong pronoun that we'll have to correct as well. Okay, let's look at one. Provides a welcome retreat for them seeking solace. Now again, here we have provides, which is wrong. We need to switch this to past to keep it consistent. So this sentence is wrong. All right. Provides a welcoming retreat for those seeking solace. Again, we have provides, which is wrong. We need to switch this to past. Provided a welcome retreat for those seeking solace. Interesting. So now we're talking about provided, which is past. Welcome retreat for those. Now, those is the correct pronoun that you can use to refer to those city dwellers. You can't say their seeking solace or even them seeking solace. Those is the right pronoun because now you're referring to those people, those city dwellers. So this seems like the correct option. Let's park it. Provided, the past tense is correct. Provided a welcome retreat for who seeks solace. This is completely wrong. Okay, it won't fit here. We have to use those because we're referring to people. Who seek solace is grammatically incorrect. And there's also seek, which is also wrong. So the answer is 3 here. Okay, again, tricky. So as you saw, right, these questions can be tricky. There were, I think, maybe 2 or 3 which were manageable, but 2 or 3 which were tricky as well. Definitely practice sentence correction, understand the rules of sentence correction, and brush up on your grammar as well.